The current sentiment among Australian politicals is to place great importance on maintaining a balanced budget. Is this good practice for the Australian economy? So, if you would like to maintain a budget balance, which means less budget deficit, consequently lower public debt, it's good or not? So this means that the first point we need to highlight is if we have a lower debt ratio, which means debt to the GDP, relatively, this means that we will have a control of the inflation pressures. Consequently, inflation rate will be low. Then we have a problem with calculating debt. Why any country would like to have a budget deficit? Budget deficit, it means that our government revenue is lower than government expenditure. So this means that we need to differentiate between a deficit and expenditure. Why a country would like to increase its expenditure? Is this just for more consumption? Or it's just by building more infrastructure which would enhance investment in the future? So there are two different things, because if they just borrow the money to consume it, there will be no future return. But if they borrow the money in order to invest it, which means they build infrastructure, this will enhance more investment, which will generate higher return in the future. This will be a good thing. Therefore, it will affect our assets or liability. If we consume it, it will be a liability. But if we use it as an investment, for example, infrastructure, it will be an asset. Then, if we have a high unemployment rate, this means that we are in a recession. To get out of a recession, we need to use our fiscal policy. Therefore, we need to increase our government expenditure or decreasing tax, which would result in a higher growth rate because we'll start to recover from the recession. Consequently, when we recover from the recession, we will go into the growth phase or expansionary phase. This means that we can collect our taxes back, and this is called the fiscal multiplier. Therefore, that's fine if any government would like to borrow, but they need to think twice about why they are borrowing. Then what we need to take into account is the intergenerational accounting, which means who will pay the cost of this debt. Because usually some countries could say, okay, you know what, for the current generation, let's have a high welfare, let's have high budget deficit, consequently a high public debt, and consume it without making any infrastructure or making any investment. And then who will pay the taxes in the future will be the next generations. And this will be not fair. Therefore, what we could do is we could borrow in order to build better infrastructure, like what happened in Eastern Germany. So this infrastructure will benefit the future generation. We could borrow in order to work on our education sector, and we provide a high quality of education. Therefore, we know that the next generation will be highly qualified, and this means that they will be highly paid. Therefore, in this case, debt will be healthy for the economy. The second and the third part of the question. Address this concern from both a monetarist and a Keynesian viewpoint. Then make your case in support of your answer to part A. So let's start with the monetarists. So they always believe that the economy is at full employment equilibrium, which means they are always at potential output. Therefore, there is no need for government intervention, which means anytime the government interfere, they will screw the economy. They will take the economy from equilibrium to disequilibrium. Therefore, just leave the market and the market will correct itself by itself. Then we have the Keynesian approach. And Keynes and his famous quote is, "We are all dead in the long run." He said, yes, the market will correct itself by itself, but it will take time. And we don't need to let our people to suffer till the market corrects itself by itself. Therefore, based on Keynes, he believes that the economy is never at full employment. Therefore, there is an urge, there is a need in order to use our fiscal policy to stimulate the economy, in order to increase our economic activity and avoid a growing deficit. Consequently, which one should we follow? As we mentioned in these 2 points, it's good to borrow, it's good to have a high deficit if you will use it in investments that will generate future return. If you just do it for consumption, This means that you wouldn't be able to service the debt in the future.